So if you or your children are feeling worried, learning to deal with that anxiety, to talk about it in a healthy way, can help the whole family become more resilient.
I wouldn't have any concerns at all about my children returning to school, given the procedures that have been put in place.
Rashnik, can I ask you to open by giving us some background to COVID effects on children?
We do know now that we have much more data from around the world that children tend to be affected by the virus much, much less than adults. They tend to spread it to each other much less easily. And most of the children who do get the virus generally contract it from an adult and are then asymptomatic. If they do have symptoms, they tend to be mild, and a very, very small minority of them become very unwell and require hospitalization.
Parents and children have faced some significant life disruptions because of COVID. And Alex, can I ask you on this one to share some of the effects that you have seen that COVID has had on children, parents, and relationships in your practice?
No one family I've spoken to or seen have experienced this pandemic in the same way. There are sort of themes, common things that people have been affected by, but no one family is the same, no one child is the same. And I think that's important for us to recognize while we're having this conversation. And families are spending more and more time together. In some cases, that has been incredibly beneficial. And I've again had families that have said to me, the silver lining of this is that I am able to have lunch with my children or check out, what they're doing. They're more talkative about what they're doing because they come down from a lesson and they talk immediately about it. So there's that more immediate presence that we have with our children. But for other families that I've spoken to and worked with, it's compounded some challenges that have already been there, and stresses around parenting, our relationships with our partners. And so I think that's something to be aware of, and to kind of be able to find a way of talking about that, as you said, Sue, earlier, in a healthy way.
Children manifest these issues in many different ways. In older children, I found that there was more of them who were actually able to come out and say that they were feeling anxious or worried. As you can imagine, in households, there's been a lot of conversations about the coronavirus, and older children are able to pick up on a lot of this, but they may not be able to interpret it or understand it very well. Sleep disruption is another problem. Part of that may be because of anxiety, but also just because of the break in routine. So children are going to bed a lot later. They may still be waking up at a normal time. Their nap schedules, have been disrupted, and sleep's very important for our mental health as well. The other thing that I've really seen as the months have gone on is the effects of excessive screen time on behaviour. I think that most of us as parents spend a lot of time being careful about how much screen time our children are exposed to, and unfortunately during this time with online learning and a lack of potentially other activities for our children, they have all spent much more time in front of screens than they should have. So eye strain and headaches are another manifestation that I've seen.
And how would you suggest parents talk to their children about COVID?
So when we're thinking about talking to our children, it is very much thinking about what do they need to know? What information can I give them that is factual, that is clear, that is not raising their anxieties? I think parents want to limit anxiety. They don't want children to worry. But we know that children as young as 2 will be aware of any changes, whether that's in routine and behaviors, whatever it might be. And their understanding, evolves through their age and stage. But the uncertainty is worse than the certainty. So in terms of actually giving them really clear, concrete information is really important. We know that actually anxiety can present with anger, agitation, negative thinking, sleep issues, which is what Rashnik talked about, sort of controlling behavior, so wanting to control things, avoiding activities particularly, and maybe even some defiance. So that's kind of how it can manifest. But what do we do about that? Well, I think first and foremost, we need to validate our own emotional experiences and not minimize our experience and our own emotions. Because in doing that, we're more able to tune into our children's emotional worlds and really honor for them that something is going on. We know children can't always name what's going on, and there are various techniques that we can use to help children talk more about their feelings. What we're not trying to do is name it to tame it. We're not trying to sort of name the feeling to get rid of it, because the feelings that children are having, that we're having, are very important. They're meaningful. We learn from our emotions. And the idea is that it's not about getting rid of feelings, it's about understanding them and helping children understand that all feelings are okay. It's what we do with them that's important.
You see, in the school, they're given a lot of time for talking. We have a lot of circle time. We have a lot of time where we're encouraging them to grow their language, to grow their communication. And everyone else is being taught to listen when they're talking. And then when they finish talking, they take on the role of listening, and someone else has the chance to talk. And that's the whole essence of circle time. And I think in the home, they've lost a lot of that, especially when there's several siblings and everyone's fighting for mum and dad's attention. I think very often they've not had that time.
I think the fundamental point is to be honest. We need to be honest with our children about what it is. They don't need to know every detail, but they need to understand it. I personally would use it as an opportunity to just talk about health in general and our immunity and how it works and how to enhance that. So, talking about what a virus is, quite a few of my patients, interestingly, have made little models and sent me photos of them over time, which, to show what a virus is and how it spreads between people and, how it makes you unwell. And almost all children will have had a cold at some point. And so using a cold as an example of what a virus is quite helpful. I think also just using that as an opportunity to remind children about eating healthily, about sleeping well, and about exercising, because those are really the most important things that we can do to maintain a healthy immune system.
What are some suggestions you might give to parents to help them in the current situation, but also focusing on going back to school and to the new normal? Remember, our children are now used to getting up at 9:30. Now they're going to have to get up a lot earlier. So what are some suggestions you could offer?
So it's about coming up with it. If you've got older children, you can get a big piece of paper and work out, what do we need from our day? What do we want to achieve? And kind of make a fun activity of it. If you've got younger children, you've got something on the fridge that's showing them how the day is going to be, when break times are, when nap times are, when play times are. So I think it's adapting to your family, to the structure of your family, and to know that routines are important.
The executive function is what controls our ability to stay focused, to stay on task, and to complete a task, to initiate a task and then complete a task. And without a doubt, in the school situation, we find routine and structure helps those children who find that the most difficult. If they know the time frame, if they know that they've got such a certain time to work through things, it's also around the goal setting, as you said. It helps them to start, to stay on task and to finish a task?
So I think having fairly structured meal times and sleep times means that your body knows what to expect, and I think then it's much easier to fit everything else around that. But I think
so, any advice we can give to our parents how they can keep their own cup full so that they're able to help others in their own home?
sort of, I keep talking about physical activity, but I think it's just so important for our mental health. And, you know, it's a good way to incorporate both exercise from a health perspective, but also for our mental health. So I think getting outside, and even if you're just going for a walk around your neighborhood for 20 minutes once a day, making that part of your routine will really help your mental health and give you some time to yourself. Doing it with a friend, even better. I think, you know, doing what you enjoy, really. So spending time doing what you enjoy. Some people are artistic, some people are musical, some people are sporty. We all have things that we enjoy doing, and just having a hobby that you enjoy doing, gardening, you know, those sorts of things that bring you some sense of satisfaction, and just making that part of your routine where you can switch off and just do something that you enjoy.
Often, as parents, we're the last ones the last ones on the list, the last ones that we attend to. And I think in that, in our physical health, in our social connections that Rashnik's talked about, the other part of that is our emotional connections. So how we tune into ourselves and find an outlet as well to talk about our emotions, to find positive ways of managing our anxiety so that we're not oversharing with our children, I think is really important. And
there is a question here which says, in places such as parts of Europe where COVID-19 cases are on the rise again, in reopening or closing schools, how do we strike a balance between the social emotional effects of school closures and the health risks to students, teachers, caregivers, and users of public transport?
What I will say is that we now have quite a lot of evidence from other countries, particularly in Europe, where children have gone back to school. Sweden never shut down their schools. Denmark shut them down for a few weeks. Iceland never shut their schools down, and they've provided very good evidence for us to show that, you know, there's been very few outbreaks in schools or even nurseries. Children are certainly not causing huge spreads of the virus. And equally reassuring for the adults is that in those countries that have kept the schools open, the teachers don't seem to have higher rates of COVID-19 than the general population. And they actually have lower rates than other professions such as supermarket workers or taxi drivers.
Yes, and I can also speak to that. So very much as we open here in Kenya, we have got a whole bank of guidelines which have come from the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health. And we're all being inspected as schools to check that we pass the COVID preparedness assessment. You know, the children ordinarily in a non-COVID year would be able to come in with their mum might be able to spend a bit of time, or their ayah, their nanny. Any of those things would be normal. Because of COVID, we can't really have those adults coming in. So we're having to readjust the way we introduce them in. We have to go meet them at the car. All of that's going to add a different dimension to their introduction to school compared to a normal school start.
The classroom is a very leveling experience. And actually, children just want to be children. So actually, once they get back into that situation, the classroom, and they're with other children at the same age stage as them, I think we'll see a lot of leveling out of that experience.
I think Alex took the word right out of my mouth. Leveling. I think that's exactly, you know, that's one of the very important things about school. Actually, we all have different experiences, no matter what age we are when we go to school. And across the world, children go to school at very different ages. But ultimately, when they're there, they're all on a sort of level playground, and they'll all find, you know, their strengths and their weaknesses.
Great, thank you so much. So the panelists, it was a really, really informed session. I think the members and the guests got quite a bit of it. And thank you to the team, Francis and Brenda, for putting this together. So we look forward to more of these interactions with our members and of course with parents. Thank you so much and have a safe day ahead.